Hello and welcome to another video.
I guess it's video now.
Welcome to another video on the YouTube channel.
But today we are going to start this series off, and we're going to do a video each month on this, and this will be the first one, so I guess it will be like an episode of the series.
Episode 1 of the series of a YouTube channel video.
And basically the structure of this is we notice that, healing journeys and every mindset changes online, people act like it takes one day, and people don't really show the thought process and how it works and how it changes over time, and the onion layers of peeling them off and working to get the core wound and healing that and changing that. And sometimes things are easier, sometimes things take longer. So we want to talk and document a version of that, basically, as here's what we've dealt with this past month, and then we'll keep doing once per month so that you can see how things evolve and change as time goes and as we work on this.
Yeah, so in today's video, we're going to talk about all the things that we are struggling with in this month, all the things that we're working on in our mindset and in our businesses, and we're also going to reveal things that we've been seeing happen collectively for content creators, business owners, and people who live lives, and what we think about them and how you can navigate the most common life challenges of the month.
Yeah, so let's get into it.
Booyah. Okay, so first we're going to start off with things going on for us over this past month, over the past 8 months. If you've been following our podcast or you go back and listen to old podcast episodes, you'll see that we've changed a lot over the past 8 months. We've burnt our businesses to the ground. We've made shifts. We've made changes. We've changed our inner dialogue of our mindset. And now I feel like we're at this coming together full circle moment where we're starting to integrate all of that, and it's coming to play in a couple of different ways. One major thing that we did, as I just mentioned, is we stopped doing our podcast altogether, and we've obviously shifted into doing these lovely YouTube videos. And I feel like for most people, you even just mentioned this, Victoria was just reading me a post of somebody who was like, oh, I launched this book and it's coming out, but I don't want to post about it anymore. I want to post about this new thing that I'm working on, and they're afraid to do that. And I feel like a lot of people have this resistance to just stopping things that they spent a lot of time on. But that's kind of what we did with the podcast. We spent a lot of time on the podcast. We did it weekly for 6 months. And then we came to a place where we're like, oh, neither of us want to do this anymore. And content is shifting. And it was cool because we felt so comfortable just changing.
You know what I realized is basically, we've talked about this and we've been discussing this a lot also this month, is people stay in situations because we think time is something that we should care about a lot more, because time is the only thing that we really cannot control or create more of. You've got what's given to you. But we're we've been friends for 10 years. I can't end your friendship even though you're literally fucking toxic and you never do things for me and you make hell in my life. Not that she does, but it's we'll stay in a relationship because of that. Yeah. Because it's 10 years, I can't just waste 10 years.
Well, it's in the last episode, I talk about Vanderpump Rules and how Katie was with Schwartz for 12 years and she never left him, even though he's emotionally abusive and sometimes physically abusive, dumping drinks on her. And she's like, well, I'm not going to leave. It's been 12 years and we're on a TV show together.
And so we think time is better, but now we've been really working on that. And so we ended the podcast pretty fast. When we came to the conclusion of
it's literally the day of, we're yeah, we're done.
We're okay. I think it took a week, but I was also having the thoughts before we had a conversation on it. But that often happens. I always have the thoughts first, and then we kind of bring them together.
And then I'm oh, those thoughts make sense.
We have worked on that of we're not focused as time of oh, well, I put so much energy into this, I can't just end it now.
Yeah, I feel like we've done, and everyone talks about that you need to detach yourself from your goals and things like that. And it's not just your goals. You need to know how to detach yourself from all things. I can't be invested in a podcast just because I have spent time on it. That doesn't make sense. I can't be completely attached to the idea that I'm going to be a millionaire and yada yada and make that define the decisions I make today. I need to make decisions today based on what's good for me, and time has nothing to do with that. And so it's a complete detachment in all ways makes us make decisions faster, which makes our lives a lot freaking better.
Yeah. A lot of inward things that we've been thinking on the podcast are now pushing outward. And so that's going to be a giant theme this month for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's cool is we talk about how, like, you know, in this series, we're going to show you how things develop over time. The podcast decision was made very quickly, but the flags of us not enjoying the podcast have always been there. Like, we're always like, oh, I hate editing this. We both hate editing it. It takes so long. We don't enjoy it. We don't have fun, you know? And so the idea of that was there, but it didn't make sense until the day that we had the conversation on, oh, what are we going to do moving forward? And so I think that's cool. And I used to be like, oh, well, I should have noticed this sooner. I should have closed the podcast down sooner. Obviously we didn't like it, but it's not about that. It's like, you're going to collect data and information throughout your life, and then eventually it'll all make sense.
And I think what's actually important here is, like, sometimes there is radical decisions that you make and they're going to be the right decision and you're not going to understand it at the right time. But for the podcast is we've been thinking about it, but not necessarily in a radical way since January. Is like how we do it, how we grow, how we change things is like we started making small shifts because we weren't happy.
Yeah.
And it took us doing a bunch of small things to us to realize, no, let's just actually just put this to rest for now. Good. And also even just like the first video that we filmed, like it felt so much better, editing so much better.
I enjoyed editing it. I didn't dread it. It's freaking fire. Go back and watch it. We'll link it down below. Yeah.
But it shows that, like, one, like we're kind of talking about this video, is it takes time to get there. Sometimes you're going to have a radical just one day jump. That's okay, but not every time will it be like that, and that's okay.
So number 2, this one's really big, is we've noticed that when people copy our content, we don't get triggered. We're not mad about it. And I used to get really mad about it because, first of all, copying people's content is not cool. And I mean, like, people would word for word verbatim copy videos that I've made, and not in the cool TikTok trend kind of way, but like, no, like bad, not good, stealing kind of way.
I always hated the thing of like, oh, copying is just like flattery. It's like you're a biggest, what do they say? It's
imitation
like,
is the biggest form of flattery.
No, it's not. No, it's fucking not.
It's gross. It's rude. It's shady.
Get your own damn thoughts and ideas. Work on yourself. And so I was triggered. I mean, in September, August of 2021, we were getting copied so much, and I was constantly triggered by it. And I was like, I know I need to deal with this, but I'm not sure how. And I didn't have the words or anything, or like the inner child thing to heal, and I didn't understand it, but I was working on a bunch of other things, and I was like, well, look, we'll get back to this. Like, I don't have the time and energy to deal with this on top of all the other stuff. And I didn't necessarily work on that specifically, but then we got copied last week. And
many times
I laughed at it. I didn't get triggered. And I was like, oh my gosh. They're copying us. And Ashley didn't believe me at first, but then she saw a few more posts. She was like,
they copied us many times.
They are.
I was like, oh, you're watching us and putting up our posts.
And it's like they started saying specific things that I was saying on the podcast. Instead of like being triggered by it, I was actually in a new way triggered of, I'm not actually saying the deep things that I want to say, because if I were to say that, I don't think they would copy as much because they would be too far out there for them to be able to grasp the idea and in turn use it to sell in their own way off of that.
Yeah, because basically like what's happening now and what's happened in the past is people are taking the things that we're saying and then they're using it to back up their own agenda, and their agenda is the opposite agenda of ours, right? Like we are very much go with the flow, the universe will support you, you don't have to work hard to get what you want, and they're very much like strategy, hustle, grind, and it's like you shouldn't be able to take what I'm saying and use that for strategy, hustle, grind mindset, so obviously we're not being polarizing enough. What's interesting is I did do a lot of work on this, and so if you're someone who gets triggered by people copying you, this is what helped me. Obviously the inner child stuff, I actually realized the reason I got so mad people copied me was twofold. We talk a lot, this onion layers. The first layer was I didn't feel like I was good enough to be seen, so I got mad when someone would say the same thing as me and then get more views. And it's like, why can they say it, but I can't say it, and they're getting the views and they're getting the validation, but it's because subconsciously I didn't actually feel worthy of being seen, and I thought it had to be harder, and I thought I had to prove myself to get seen. So obviously I had more work to do, and it got to be easier for other people, but I had to go find the process, right? I had to go find the way. I had to make it harder, and that was subconscious work I had to do. But then on the very tail end of it, when I was like, I uncovered that, that. The other thing was I felt like other people got to do what they want, but I didn't. And maybe that roots back to like not feeling like I have to prove myself, but I was like, oh, other people get to do what they want, not me. So other people can copy me, other people can say that, other people can't, but not me. And I had to uncover like, that's almost like a full ass victim mentality to
I think
get
it's
there.
like, oh, other people can copy me and get away and market off of it, but I can't do that to other people.
Yeah, it's like they get to do whatever they want and I can't and I'm stuck, and it's like, no, that's not true. And it's like, what's really cool is like I uncovered that, and that doesn't apply just to content and being copied. It applies to so many areas of my life. But it was cool to have like that physical representation last week of I got copied, not mad. I know I'm safe. I know nothing's being taken from me. And a lot of people will be like, go after them, go after them. And it's like, no, I'm fucking good. They're not gonna know what I'm gonna say. Cause you know, I always tell people like, you're going straight and people are copying you, and one day you're gonna turn left and they're gonna have no idea what to do because you're the one coming up with the original thoughts.
And I'm like, okay, I guess it's time to turn left and turn hard. But yeah, no, I worked on the same things. I just didn't work on it in the sense of like thinking
For
about the
that copying, yeah.
But it's like it all paid off and like was in the same way. And that's why like you can work at problems at a different way and still benefit in many areas of your life. And it's like, maybe I could have been a teeny bit triggered, but because I built a foundation where I'd worked on those things, like I'd be able to work through it a lot faster. And that's why like we're saying like this doesn't happen in one day, and we've got to peel back the onion layers slowly. And it's okay to do that. And welcome, Max.
Thank you. Ooh, I like this one. This month, we have been embracing the Fool. The Fool in the traditional tarot card deck, which is naive and youthful and freedom and flowing and fun. That has been us. And you had a really good example of that if you want to share that one.
What was it?
You don't remember. Cool. So Victoria had a cool example of this, of how we've started to really dismantle our schedules, and this really happened in many layers, right? So, you know, first we're like, okay, how do we want to work? When do we want to work? We like working in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, but it has to be creative. It can't be too action oriented. And then we're like, wait, we actually want to like live our lives. We don't want to live for the weekend. We want to have fun on the weekdays.
Oh,
yeah. And so like we started doing things like we went candle making, and then a few weeks ago we went hiking in the middle of the day. And when we were hiking, we were like, ooh, this feels like kind of weird. Like I feel like I'm playing hooky. Like I'm skipping out on school kind of vibes. Like everyone's on the clock and I feel like I shouldn't be here. But then it changed.
And last week was first nice ass week in Boston. It was almost 90 degrees.
Ooh, 86,
on one day.
baby.
It was so nice. And we were like, all right, Thursday, we are going to work for an hour or two in the morning. And then we're going to have a picnic. We're going to go to the park. We're going to go do some yoga on top of the roof deck. And then we're just going to have a jolly old time. And we did.
It was
and
jolly.
I literally felt like I was living my normal life. I didn't feel like I was playing hooky. And yeah, we were doing it with like intention, but we did the hike with intention too. I was just enjoying everything. And I was like, no, this is my life now. This is what I've been building towards. I don't feel like I'm playing hooky anymore. And I feel like I can do this more often. And we were reflecting like, why didn't we do this last year? Like, this is so fucking nice. And we're like, it was because we're on like 30 plus calls a week.
But we had made up rules that were so strict that didn't allow us any free time. And it was wild because I didn't even realize like how normal that day, and it was many days. We did like multiple days of like having fun on the roof deck because it was so nice. I didn't even realize until the end of the week when you were like, oh, isn't it weird that we didn't feel like we were playing hooky? And I was like, I literally never felt guilty. I didn't feel like we were playing hooky. Like it felt so normal. And I was like, whoa, this is my life. Like this gets to be my life. Oh.
And it's like, you know, I got like what I wanted to get done in the morning, which was like able to get done in an hour. And then I was like, I don't have to do anything else. Like all of that other stuff that I would normally have been forcing myself to do was made up. And then, or I would spend a ton of time scrolling to try and find new ideas and do all of this stuff to get mad.
Yeah. And I mean, I had 30 calls on my calendar this time last year, but even if I didn't have those calls on my calendar, like you said, like I would have made up tasks. I would have been like, oh, how can I do more? Because obviously if I do more and I market more and I have more, then I'll get more clients. So I'd be like, oh, well, let me build another funnel. Let me send more emails. Let me create another freebie. Like always making more instead of inherently feeling like everything I was doing enough. And I finally feel enough. And that is a wild concept.
When I was in college, whenever we'd get a vacation and, you know, you have spring break, I wouldn't go away. I wouldn't go do fun things because I would be like a victim mentality of like, I don't get to do that. I don't get to have that fun life. I have to stay here and work my job because I was in school full-time and working full-time, but also I need to use that time to work on my portfolio, to get ahead for applications, to do all of this thing, do all of the back end stuff that I'm not able to do because I don't have much time on my calendar on normal times. And so there's no rest. I never let myself even have a day where I got to do fun things, even on like a vacation week. And like that transferred then to then me owning my own business, and it was like, no, you don't get that. Yeah. You don't get that easy life. You don't get to go do that. That's not the life we get to live.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people live this way, because I've even heard people on podcasts say like they'll have a to-do list and they'll get everything done on their to-do list and they'll have more time left in their day. So they're like, let me get ahead on tomorrow's to-do list and then I'll have more free time tomorrow. And it's like, you have free time today, and you know for a fact if you have more free time tomorrow, you're going to just do the next to-do list, and there's always going to be things to do, especially if you run your own business, because you can make up things to do forever. So I will just say being in this spot is way better. I don't know, like, how did we get here, do you think? What do you think was, like, the key?
One, I think it really started in November, is, like, I started to be like, okay, I'm done work at 3 o'clock. Yeah. I'm done work at 3 o'clock.
It kept getting, like, earlier and earlier.
And then in January, I had the idea of, like, okay, I was seeing a bunch of these posts of day in the lives, and it was this girl doing like a bunch of people's day in their lives and like testing them out to find her perfect day in the life. So she did like Albert Einstein, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder what mine would be. And so I started to try and go and find that, and I started depicting, I was like, okay, I notice I'm really good at action steps in the morning. So action step time is in the morning, and then I get time off in the afternoon. I can take a nap, I can go for a walk, I can eat food, and then in the afternoon it's creative time. But we don't always have to have creative time, so that's when we started to give ourselves the idea that we could go do other things. And then we were like, no, what if we can like do this more sustainably and more like intuitively?
Yeah.
And that's what led us to finally being able to have that version.
Yeah, that makes sense. It definitely was layers. I agree. It started in November, because I remember November was the second time I went to visit you in Mexico, and I was like, I'm not working this time as much. Like, I'm working in the morning and that's it. I need to rest. And something I had to do was like literally journal and meditate and heal that I was worthy of resting. And after I fixed that and like believed, okay, I can rest, I can slow down, I had to work on the idea that I am safe and taken care of. And even if I do rest, like things will still be taken care of, and like nothing will fall apart. And that added with the actual like strategy of like implementation of the new schedule, I think is what kind of wrapped it up in a bow and got us here.
And something for me is, I remember like in November doing that in Mexico, is I felt really uncomfortable with it at first.
Yeah.
And so I always forced myself to leave my apartment to go stop myself from working, and I wouldn't take anything with me so that I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
But what really pushed it like last month is, one, we were getting into yoga a lot more, which we can talk about another time. But basically, I would do yoga after I finished my production period for the day, because that allowed me to have a wind down. And then I was able to go do the things with a lot more enjoyment. And it's like, even if you work a 9 to 5, you need to have a wind down period. But like with work from home, we've lost that.
Yeah.
And it's feeling that earlier in the day felt even more uncomfortable for me, and I had to work on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because you need time, like in any situation, whether it's a 9 to 5 or you in the morning, to de-stress and close the stress loop. And that could be as simple as like some breathing, or it could be as fun as some yoga. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so that's why, like last week before I came over, I was like, oh, I'll be over. I just got to do yoga real fast first, because I needed that time to de-stress before I could go and have fun.
Yeah, versus what most people do is not take a time to relax their nervous system. It's like, on to the next thing. I'm scrolling on TikTok. I'm bypassing all the things that I need to think about, and having that time, whether it's in yoga to have no thoughts, or to meditate and have thoughts, or, you know, to just breathe, really resets your brain and allows you to engage in the next activity even more mindfully than if you were just like shoving and consuming the entire day.
It's also why I stopped listening to podcasts on walks.
Oh, yeah. I listen in silence. Listen to my brain.
I listen to all the birds that are chirping nonstop in the spring.
Yeah. Whenever I told people, like, oh, we're not doing a podcast because podcasts are lame, that was the post I made. People are like, oh, but I like listening to podcasts on my walks. And I'm like, I like listening to my brain on walks because I get amazing ideas and insight there. And I don't even have to work for it. They just dropped in my head.
Also, I'm tired of podcasts. They're all just saying the same thing, except for some. Noble Blood, amazing podcast.
Yeah,
I love her.
Like where you're like learning about
But
history, because it's like more like storytelling than it is like learning.
And it's not necessarily learning about anything that I'm going to use and then produce off of or anything. It's just a fun story to learn. And it's different every single time, where podcasts where they're always talking about the same exact thing. I'm tired. I'm done. I'm sorry. After like 10 episodes, we're good. I got all the information. I will say one thing I have been, because these are things that we've like noticed in improvements. One thing I'm deeply working on this month is the idea of good versus bad. And I kind of told you this today because when we were doing a tarot card reading last week, Ashley pulled a card and I was like, oh, is that a good card or a bad card? And I was like, whoa, Victoria. What are you doing here? Because it's like, why am I already trying to perceive what is good versus bad so I have a reaction and I know how to think about something? Because like, say that in tarot card saying like a death card, that doesn't necessarily mean something bad. Like that is you trying to say that death can just mean something's dying and like you're ending a chapter. That doesn't necessarily mean something's bad is happening. It can be good. And so that's why I'm working this month. I have been working on that and I'm still working on it. There is still more to come on that and I'm catching myself still, but not perceiving things as good or bad and just perceiving them as things. And maybe they do become bad and maybe they do become good, but I do not have to inherently judge them at the start. And I can allow them to develop and not judge them.
That's so good. One, the death card is actually the most misunderstood card, and you just explained it so well with that concept, so go you. Wow. And two, I feel like I've also been thinking that because I was thinking a lot this month about like, why do I feel like at any time the rug can be pulled out from under me? And I talked to you about that, and it's like, why do I feel that way? And I don't feel that way about a lot of things. I just feel that way about my business. Like at any moment I could lose all my money, I could lose all my clients, I could lose everything, and guess what? Then I'm gonna lose my home. Versus like whenever I think about Max, this beast right here, he eats all of the things. He ate half a bag of trail mix with raisins and M&Ms and had to go to the hospital. He eats so many things that he ends up pooping out, and it's fine. But it's like when he does that, I'm not like, oh my God, he's gonna die. I killed my dog. I'm always like, that's an interesting fact. We'll see what happens. And I started to notice like I'm like that in many ways in my life, just not with money or my business. And it's really that there's nothing good or bad. I've started to think like, oh, that's an interesting fact. And how can I not jump to conclusions about things happening in my life, making them good or bad, or just saying, interesting fact there. We'll see how that plays out. It's this whole theme that slowing down really allows us to have more thoughts, that second thought that we're always talking about, and nothing is good or bad. You just have interesting facts that lead to options.
I think we try and section things as good or bad to like preemptively figure out how we need to deal with that, how we need to act, how we need to kick into gear. But we don't, and that's
a whole fight or flight thing. Like your nervous system is like, okay, we got to define this because I need to know what's gonna happen.
And I think of like, in movies or whatever, is like, do you want the good news first or the bad news first?
It's like, what if you just have some facts?
Yeah,
we just got some facts for you.
And maybe some are not as fun to hear, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean they're inherently bad.
I will say also too, I've seen you do a good job with that this week, because even I texted you something, I was like, oh, this person's aunt died. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's probably a bad thing. And you're like, well, is that a bad thing? Like, I don't know. Like, so she might not have been close to her aunt. And I'm like, very true.
Like, I've had aunts die and I'm like, okay, they're like 10th removed and whatever. And like my mom's telling me and I'm like, am I supposed to cry right now?
Like interesting fact.
I've met them maybe 5 times in my life. I'm not close to them.
Yeah.
That's sad, right? But I'm not inherently saddened by it.
Just a fact that has happened in the world. So good. Facts. Interesting fact. Okay, and then the last one of our inward expression of the world or lessons, then we'll go into the collective lessons, is as we've been making all of these inward changes, we're now at the point, which is why I said we've come full circle, where we're like, I want to see the outward changes. Like, I want to physically change my space. I want to change my clothes. I want to change what I eat. And something me and Victoria talk about a lot is you have all these people who are like, when you get sick is when you're up leveling. Your body is shedding the old version. You're purging the old version of you. That is how you know. And it's so toxic how people think about this, even if that may be true in some situations. People are using it as I'm getting sick every month because I up level every month. No, ma'am, you are burnt out. You're getting sick every month because your body is so freaking tired that it's ill. Versus like, I don't look at getting sick as an up level anymore. We're looking at our up level as, I have no idea what I like eating anymore. I don't know what I want to wear. I'm not happy with like the outward version of myself because the inward version of myself has changed so much. And one of the things I did this month after Victoria was like, you should change your office. I was like, you're right. I hate my office. It gives me the ick. Sitting at my desk makes me tired. And because my office was set up for 2 years as the hustle version of myself, and I completely changed my office around and I love it so much. It makes me so happy. And that was like the first outward expression I've gotten of myself, my new version of self. But I'm still like, I got a lot of questions on what the F I'm supposed to be doing.
And right, and so it's like we have been in the past 9 to 6 months deeply working on the inward version. And so now, as we've come full circle on the inward, is we need to like show how does that inward express in the outward expression of our world. And so like the office is a great example of that. And it's like things feel like old me, and I want to change that because that doesn't feel like the inner version of me, and it feels like a physical identity crisis where inward me is not matching the external world, and I want to change that because it's not representing what I've done and where I am and how happy I am. And so I want to change that. And that's like real, like showing of next level and up leveling rather than sickness, because look, when you're burnt out, your immune system's shit.
Yeah.
Not even a hot take. That's just literally a fact. I'm just going to tell you, you're probably going to get sick a lot more because you're really tired.
Yeah.
And if you ever stop, you're going to get sick even more.
That's just the fact. Yeah, so I definitely look at it a lot differently now, which is interesting. And what's also interesting is there's levels to this and there's layers to this, because I mean, what was it, like 6 months ago even, I literally purged my closet and I got rid of like 4 bags of clothes. And I was like, cool, restart, refresh. And now I'm like, no, I think I need to get rid of all the clothes. It was like, that was baby new version of me, and now radical new version of me is like, everything needs to go.
That was like, okay, so whenever I had clients in the first session is like, okay, so we're gonna work on like building a new version of you, and so how do we want to start a decluttering? And I let them do like a decluttering of like the physical space or like mental space, or digital space is another good one because that's something we often forget. And so maybe that's unsubscribing from emails that constantly annoy them or whatever, or just like redoing your hard drive, or just kind of, you know, moving your desk around, right? Is I think that was like the little physical version for you to then do the inward stuff and like be excited about it. And
that makes sense.
Do that, and now you're here for the bigger version, because normally like at the end of like working with clients is then they're like, okay, now I need to do an outward version of it. And so we're just at that place.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the mini change to get you excited to then do the inward work, which leads you to the bigger change. The other thing I think about with like the up level thing is a lot of people have the question of like, well, what would my future self do? What would my future self do? Or what would my future self wear? And they try to get into the mind of their future self. And what I've learned this week is you can't think to be your future self. You just are who you are now. And I've been listening to my body a lot more lately and like trying to tune in with that relationship now that my relationship with my mind has improved so much. And what I've been thinking about is your mind might change in the future, but your body, the vehicle that will take you to the future, will roughly remain the same. And your body knows what it wants right now, and your body knows what it wants in ideal conditions when you are that future self and your mindset is great or whatever. So something I've been thinking about lately is asking myself, like, well, what does my body want? Like for food, like this week I was like, my body wants cold food. I want crisp vegetables. I want cold pasta salad. I want smoothies. And I'm like, that's very specific, but that's what my body wants, and that's what I'm gonna do with. Versus like this time last year, I was doing meditations and I was like, what does my future self eat? What does my future self wear? It's like, I can't think what my future self wants. I'm not her yet. She'll fucking know, but my body might have more information than anything else because it's gonna be here in the 5 years and it's gonna be here right now, you know?
So I will argue that you are already your future self.
Right. So it's like, who are you thinking of?
Because I would always do this meditation with my clients, which is basically, it's like a visualization exercise and like coming into their new self or whatever, and honoring like their needs and whatever, and turning up the dial and learning how to like listen to their intuition and senses. And in that is like, I normally would say something along the lines of like, they're already speaking and you already know exactly what you want. To become that version of yourself more often, you just have to constantly be asking yourself, not in your mind, but like your body, of like what it needs.
Yeah, I totally agree. No, yeah, and that's what I've been thinking a lot lately. Like, there's no future self to tap into. I can't think like her. Like, I am her. I have all the information now. My body knows what it needs. And it's like, my mind will create chatter. That's why my mind isn't my future self, but my body, and like, when you tap into your intuition, like, that is who you are as the higher version. So I would rather listen to what that's saying than try to like guess with my mind, and because your mind is tricky, and your mind will be like, well, you should be like this version, you should like these foods because they're healthy, or you should be acting in this way because that's what a responsible higher version of you would do. But that could also be misleading. Okay, anyways.
Now to the collective.
Now, okay, that's kind of like our journey over the past month. And now let's talk about what the collective has been going through and what we're noticing as themes for people. These are things that people have been deeply struggling with over the past month that we've noticed. You've probably been struggling with them too, because again, it's like collective experience. And so we got some advice on what to do about it. Okay, so recently, for all of time, I've seen a lot of creators talk about how upset they are about low views. And yes, low views are upsetting, blah, blah, blah. Views on TikTok especially are lower than usual. But big creators too are getting really frustrated. And I recently saw a story from Allison, what's her last name? Cooch. Allison Cooch, who is a content creator, and she's married to an NFL player. Anyways, and she's Isaac. Cooch. Yes, Isaac. That's and Allison. Name, right, because that's her last name.
Yeah.
I love that a lot. So she made a story where she was talking about how she's like moved since the NFL is over and all that stuff. And she used to live in Ohio when her husband was playing there. And she would make TikToks and post 5 times a day. And she was like, and it was so fun because posting 5 times a day didn't feel like work. It just felt like I was sharing my life. And I love sharing my life. But now that she's moved and it's off season, she's noticed that it's harder for her to create. She's not posting as much. She's not feeling as excited about working. And she's feeling really guilty about that. And then really to add on to that, when her views are low and she only gets 100,000 views instead of maybe the 1 million that she's used to, it makes her feel really shitty about herself. And she even mentions like, oh, I know I shouldn't feel that way and that's dumb. And I'm like, Allison, get it together. But it's a real experience and it's valid, and she's not the only one going through that. I've also seen other content creators who are really frustrated that their views have been low lately, and they're like, what does that mean? How do I beat the algorithm? And I even saw a creator today who was like, oh, well, TikTok doesn't like when I do content this way, so now I have to do content this other way, and I'm gonna refilm this video. And that just like makes me really sad, because there's a lot of layers to this. But one, we should not be using the algorithm to drive what we're doing. We should do what makes us happy, but I know that's a hard place to get to.
That shame isn't gonna allow you to push forward, because shame just blocks everything and pushes you into a very negative space. But is what can we understand from that situation? And so what we would say is, okay, like, it's okay that you don't want to film that stuff right now. You don't have to follow this algorithm thing that like you think that has to work. You can do things your own way. My videos always do the best when I ever do whatever the fuck I want. And there are some things that I know I can create that will always go viral, but like, I don't like creating that content most of the stuff because I don't want to talk about that all the time. And so I don't do that because I don't want to do it. And I don't need to be constantly viral and in the biggest things, but we think we do, because once we get there, we think that needs to be normalized. And also when you're doing brand deals, which Allison and a bunch of other people do, is like, they
need the views.
They need the views high and want to do that so they can get better deals and everything, and that makes sense. But when we internalize it and we're like, okay, but that's really dumb, it is kind of dumb, but it's also not. It's like, it's understandable why you're thinking that way, and we need to shift and make you in a more comfortable way. And so, you know, right now she's in the off season, right? It's like, you can view that as your off season as well if you want to, like that you don't do it as much. There are seasons in our lives where we just don't want to do the same thing anymore, and it's okay if that's fun for you for 3 months in the winter, and then it's not fun for you in the spring anymore, and you don't want to do that, and you want to do it completely different and only post 2 videos a week. It's okay that if in the summer then you want to post 6 videos, and then in the fall you only want to post 1. Yeah. And it's okay, because you don't have to create just to create. You can create for fun, but we lose that in the sense of when it's not fun anymore, but we feel we need to reach the same expectations, because if we do it, we'll somehow get fun again, but it won't.
Well, I think it also like ties into what we mentioned in the other section is like things are not good or bad, but if you're like, oh, I used to like posting 5 times a day and now I don't want to post at all, that must be bad. But it's like, no, that's an interesting fact. What can we learn about this and what can we learn about ourselves? Because I used to do that too. Like in 2020, I loved posting 3 times a day. TikTok was new, it was exciting, it was fun. And then I did what Allison probably felt like she needed to do, and I just kept posting 3 times a day, even when it was not fun. I would force myself. It was not a good time. I was like you, where I knew it would go viral, so I'd do it even though I didn't want to talk about it. Props to you for not doing that. That's a hard place to get to. I mean, I don't do that now, but I used to. And it's because, 1, we're looking at things as good or bad, and 2, it's like this constant pressure to be consistent and not understanding that consistency doesn't mean for life. It changes, and there's different versions of consistency. 5 times a day for the rest of your life doesn't sound like a good time. Like you said, seasons sounds like a great time. You and I have even talked about that within our own company. You know, we're like, I'm not mad if we work for 6 months of the year and the other 6 months we just vibe. Like, that's fine with me. And it's understanding how you work and what your creative cycles look like and what your work cycles look like. I don't think enough people think about that in the content creator space, because everyone has a different creative cycle. But instead of asking, what is my creative flow? People are asking, how many times should I post? How do I get more views? And what does it look like on the algorithm? But what you don't understand is if you operate in your creative flow, the rewards will come to you because you're in your excitement, your enthusiasm, your joy for the work that you're doing. And that equates to way more opportunities and views than you doing something for the sake of consistency or because it's what you used to do.
And it's also like, we can argue and use that point of like, you know, it was fun for you then, and that we could tell, people could tell, the viewers can tell, but it's not anymore, and we can't tell.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's hard to say because, and it's hard to understand for yourself because it's like, well, I still feel like I should do this and everything.
And I was
that's not
passionate.
fair.
Yeah.
But it's okay. And it's okay. You don't have to do the same level all the time.
Yeah, you don't. You get to change and grow with the seasons. And I think like what's also hard is when you had a thing that you were doing and it was getting you results, you think that you need to continue to do that thing to get results. Like for example, I used to do master classes and I loved doing them at first. They were so fun and I would always get so many clients when I did a master class. But then I started hating doing master classes. But I was like, but if I want to get a lot of clients, I know this is the easy way to do it. But then what actually started happening is I started getting less and less and less clients because I started dreading the master classes more. You don't have to keep doing the same thing because it once got you results. That's why being a business owner, being a content creator is so fun. It's an experiment and you get the opportunity to change. You don't have to do things because that's the way it's always been done. That's corporate America bullshit. We don't need to do that. Right. And so if you are in that situation where you're like, oh, I used to do this way and I know it works, instead of asking like, how do I keep doing that? Or how do I get more excited about that thing that I used to do? You need to ask, what do I want to do right now? Because whenever Victoria was like, maybe a masterclass, I was like, it sounds like a good idea, but if I'm being honest, like my body says absolutely fucking no, you know, and that's okay. And that can be the answer. And you don't even need to know what you're going to do instead. You don't have to know. You just have to live and experiment and keep asking yourself questions until you get to the right spot.
And that kind of goes into like our next point where a lot of people online, are noticing that they have lost their sparkle and their passion and they're trying to get it back.
And they lost their passion for their business, they lost their passion for their life, their content creation, they lost their sparkle, their shine, their whatever. And I hate this concept of get it back. Like, why are you getting it back? Like, where did it go? Like, what do you mean get it back? I don't have an answer, but I'm really
hustle culture.
I'm really thinking
they
that
stole
right
it
now. Like,
and
who
locked
took it?
it.
Oh, it's like the whole concept.
And they put it in the little box in the devil card.
Yeah, like your business stole your passion, and so you think this is what I think it is. If we get a like a little analogy going. Or like a metaphor, we'll see. Business stole your passion and it's locked in a bird cage and you think I need to get this business back in love with me to get my passion back, right? So we need to go start dating again. I need to like this business again, but it's like, you have more than one passion. That's what they didn't tell you. You thought that passion was your soulmate? It's not your soulmate. You got 45 other passions. Hello, multi-passionate girlies. Hello, where are you? We got other passions. Fuck that passion. Why do you need that one? That's not your soulmate. You got a lot of soulmates.
You know, this is an idea that I had last month and I didn't ever make a video on it.
And here we are. Oh, yes. Your zone of genius, your zone of excellence, and how people get those confused.
Okay. No. Well, actually, I'm going a whole different route. So, all right. So zone of genius is, I believe, a terrible factor for us to learn so early on in the age of intelligence or information that we have. The reason being is because we try to niche ourselves down so early in our lives.
I forgot about this part.
And so we think, like multi-passionate is bad and everything, and everyone tells us to niche. And that's what falls out of love in your business, because you're like, I can only do one thing and this thing worked for me, so I should never do anything else.
Yeah.
Right? So we live in that, and also then like thinking of time and everything. Well, if it worked then, we should just keep trying and everything. Like it will come back and we'll enjoy it again. Things in life, sometimes there's just things that you don't like, right? And so we've made up this thing of needing to stay in our zone of genius. And I remember you last year, this is funny to talk about, is you were like, I need to figure out how to stay in that and hire things out. And you're trying to figure out, like, I was doing this worksheet to what I need to hire out and not do anymore. So I stay in my zone of genius. So I do more of those things. But we had a conversation last week where like, oh my gosh, with not doing as much and not faking all these fucking stupid tasks and everything, we're like, I'm able to do the things in my life. And we were thinking like then when we were making a lot more money, Max, shush up, is we were like, if I make more money, that just solves my problems. And so with the finding your passion is we've tried to force ourselves to stay in the zone of genius and not allow ourselves to do anything else. You don't have to be a genius to do one thing and only do that thing, and we try to do that too early on in our lives. And a great example of a TikTok that I saw a month ago or something was Leslie Knope in Parks and Rec. She didn't get her dream job until she was like 52.
Yeah.
But we're trying to go get this at like 22.
Yeah.
Whoa. Go be multi-passionate. Go have many things. You don't have to do it in one area.
Dude, I was like, so obsessed last year with like, what's my thing? Everyone has a fucking thing, it seems like, and I don't have a fucking thing. I would get so mad. I'm like, what does my fucking, I don't know who I am. I was like going through an identity crisis. And then I realized I don't have a thing. I got a lot of things. I got a lot of fucking things. And I didn't need a thing because I kept trying to make my thing. And I'm like, is it a business thing? Like, what am I going to be known for? And I didn't feel like I was good enough to just be known for being myself. And I think that's the issue, is like all these people who are like, I need to find my passion again. I need to find like what I like about my business again. I need to fall back in. I need to find my motivation. It's like, okay, well, I think if you're saying that just because I said the same thing, then deep down you do not feel good enough by just being yourself. Because I have so many journals of me just being like, I don't want to work. I actually don't want to work. I just want to do whatever I want and have a good time and have money come to me. Like, and then people shame you. And then people shame you and say you're lazy if you want to live life like that. But like, no, like I still want to do stuff, but I want to do what I want. Asking what is your passion, or not what is my passion, like what's my thing, how do I fall back in love with my business? It's probably because you don't inherently feel worthy as yourself and believe that whatever you want to do is good enough. Because you have all these people who are like, I don't love my business anymore, and they're trying to fall back in love with it and figure out their strategies instead of just asking, what is it that I want to do, and trusting that whatever they want to do is good enough.
Two important things.
I have another one
where it is things in your life for your passion, and then also like, let's say in your business for this example. The reason being is, your business is a relationship, and we really need to think about it like that more often and everything, but is you want to feel invigorated in that again, but you're just doing the same exact things, but then often they're trying to be like, oh, well, this weekend I didn't work and I actually just read and I just had fun things this weekend. That's good. That can give you some great, but then you're still going to be fucking miserable in your fucking business. I understand it. I know you're going to say no, but I know you're feeling it. And so you have to find it in both areas. And it's like, in a relationship, you cannot expect one person to be your everything. You cannot expect one person to do all of that. That's why we're supposed to have a community and supposed to have multiple people so that you can get it in many areas of your life. You need to find it in many areas and many people and many things in your life. And so stop trying to then find it in another thing, because yes, your business did stop that. And that is something we got to find it in your life again, but you also got to find it in your business. We got to do both.
Yeah, which leads us to why it's like, okay, so if we know that like your business can steal your personality, and we can make our business our identity, and we can lose our passion for it, and then think that we lost our identity, because we did, and why do we stay in those situations? We realize people are staying in toxic business situations, or they're stuck trying to find their passion because we will accept things that we feel deeply insecure about, and like, on an underlying level think we deserve. So let me give you an example. I have a friend who was in a abusive relationship, but she couldn't see that it was emotionally abusive until the very end of it. And we were like, why is that? And she was like, well, you know, when he made me like feel really insecure about the way I look or the way I dress or the way my body is shaped, she inherently felt like, no, that makes sense. I don't feel good about my body. I don't feel good about myself. It makes sense that he would say that. Versus when he...
Max, you just farted and it smells terrible.
Like, he's making this so miserable. This is not fun.
Can you be a good dog for once?
Like, literally, what the fuck? You were fucking sleeping while we were hanging out talking about One Piece. Anyways,
we're not trying to film you, so you can leave.
Versus when he started to tell her who she could and couldn't hang out with, she was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. You can't tell me who I can hang out with. That sounds a little abusive and toxic. I'm out of here. And it's like, okay, well, why in that situation was that such a hard no for her versus in other situations when he said mean things to her, did she accept it? And it's because we cannot put up big boundaries around things that we feel insecure about. We can, but it's very, very difficult. So that often happens in our business. Why, if I know it's bad to work 14 hours in a day, would I continue to do that? Because on a deep level, I thought that I had to work hard to prove myself to get the things that I want in my life. And those are the cycles that continue inside of our businesses and that make us settle, because we settle for what we feel worthy of. And if we do not feel worthy of good things, we're going to settle for bad things, bad situations. So much so it's going to be hard for us to believe that there's any other way that business or life could possibly be.
And it's like a different, not different, but it's like a second way of thinking of the victim mentality of we deserve this, we deserve to have that, and we don't deserve anything else because we are insecure about it, and it's just like the way our identity is formed. So we'll find ways to show us that it's true.
Yeah.
And until you're ready to like change the map on that, then you're gonna stay in that situation because you inherently believe that that's what you're worth.
I know, and those, like all three of those things really drive me bonkers. Like for the people who want to do things differently and they're shaming themselves because they want to do things differently. People who are trying to find their passion in their business again. People who are stuck in toxic businesses and can't see it. It makes me sad because they literally cannot see how rough the situation is because on some level they think that's how it has to be and their brain cannot get it through their thick skull that it could be different. And I'm only saying that because I was that way. Like, I literally was like, you have to work hard to get what you want, point blank, that's it, nothing else makes sense. Versus now I'm like, I am safe and taken care of no matter what I do with no conditions attached. Are you kidding me? But it was so hard for me to believe that because I was settling for all the things I was insecure about.
And that's why when we shame ourselves about not wanting to do things the same, about needing to do them the same way, about needing to stay in that doesn't change us because that's just going to keep you inside of that identity loop of thinking that you need that, thinking that you deserve that and everything. And until you're ready to change it, and that means we can't shame ourselves. You can't yell at your friend to leave the ex because they don't fucking care until they themselves are ready to deal with that and figure that and change that identity and change their value on the worth. Then they're going to stay in that loop and that relationship and whatever, your business, until you're ready to change that. And you have to decide you're ready to change that and give yourself compassion and you have to have awareness and then compassion to change.
Yeah, which was something that we've been talking about a lot because, like you said, your ex can be dating the most toxic person ever, but she's not going to see it until she wants to see it. And that's really been hard for me over the past couple months is thinking about the clients we want to work with. Did he fart? What's been hard over the past month is that you can't tell people that their situation is toxic. They have to find it for themselves. And it's like, we have the Living Adventures Collective, and we know that people who join it are going to get to this place where we've had all these crazy realizations this month, and life is so much better, and we see how things can be different, like our lights are turned on in our head. And the people who need the most help just can't see that that could even be possible. So like in the meantime, what does a good friend do? Just informs their friend of all the ways their life is good, and all, like, we're informing you of all the way things can be, and hoping that the right people who are ready to make a change will know that change is possible. You don't have to go through change alone. And this process gets to be so simple and so rewarding, especially when you do it not alone. Like we've gone through this process of basically getting out of a toxic relationship with our work and our business together. And that allowed us to see what's possible instead of living in this toxic world where we're frustrated about low views, we're frustrated about our content getting copied, we're not motivated, we're not passionate, we're all these bad things are frustrating things, we're feeling stuck. Like that's not the reality anymore. But we only got out of there because we were really willing to acknowledge it was toxic.
Yeah. And we were willing, there came a point, like it wasn't at first, I think it took us 3 months to get there. And then we were like, all right, what if we ask these questions? What if we ask the question if I don't want to work anymore? Okay, I know this is a really
What if I never want to work again? I'll ask that question. I'll see what happens, you know?
And then once we were able to start doing that together is then we were able to start looking for other answers, and were able to start seeing that shift and working on the things. And there was a lot of layers to come with that. But on the other side, it's really fun. It's really nice.
So fun. Yeah, because I was also thinking, it was like, okay, well, if we can't tell people that their business is toxic, their relationship is toxic, how did I realize my relationship was toxic? Because obviously no one told me. I just had to come to that realization. And I think it really was just like I got so fed up with the way things were that I was like, there has to be a different way. I don't know what the way is, but I don't like the way right now. And then that's how it was like, okay, 3 months of wondering what the way was to then being like, you know what? There is no way. I'm going to experiment and I'm going to find the way. So I think that's like, yeah, you just have to come to your own conclusion.
Yeah. And until then,
Shit
we'll
sucks.
be here.
We'll be here. And the Living Adventures Collective will be here accepting applications for people who are ready to make a change and who are ready to get to the place where you don't care about low views, you post what you want, and I don't know, you go to do rooftop yoga at 11 a.m. on a Thursday because you can do whatever you want.
And you basically get to go through a breakup with some friends.
With some besties who cheer you on. It's like, imagine if you and 10 of your best friends all went through a breakup at the same time. That's the girl boss energy I want. I don't want Capricorn girl boss. I want 10 women breaking up with toxic relationships girl boss energy, which is what you're gonna find in the Living Adventures Collective. That's
and then
so
you get
cool.
to go on the vacation at the end.
A vacation with your besties. What? That shit's so fun. Anyways, apply to that in the comment section below, and I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it for this.
Bye.
Bye.